much. It's exactly 5 minutes past 9, and thank you. Sorry, it's 9 a.m. in South Africa, but it's 5 minutes past 10. And thank you for joining us for the first in a series of discussions that we want to hold around strengthening multi-level food system governance in Kenya. And but before we start, I am Solofina Nekesa. I'm a Senior Professional Officer for Urban Systems at ICLEI Africa. And please note that today's food lab is being recorded. So by participating, you consent to being recorded. So before we go ahead, please do take some time to write your name in the chat. So write your name and the organization that you are representing. And would like to encourage you to make this a very participative and a very interactive discussion, because it's really around how we can all discuss and discuss around strategies for streamlining or strengthening issues around multi-level food systems governance in Kenya. And to note, this is a follow-up to the UN Food System Dialogues that were held last year, and these were held right from national level to local level in Kisumu and Nairobi, among other counties. So this is a follow-up discussions. I'm trying to highlight what are some of those key priorities that were noted during the discussions as priorities, and then how we're able to empower the counties to be able to take this forward. So a bit of background on who we are as ICLEI. So ICLEI is Local Governments for Sustainability, and we are a global network of more than 2,500 cities in both Africa and out of Africa. And our role is to support local and regional governments that are committed to sustainable urban development. And we do this through influencing sustainability policy and driving local action for low emission development, for nature-based solution, equitable and resilient circular development. And these discussions that we're holding today are around strengthening one, sustainability policy, but then related to issues around food systems governance, and then driving equitable and resilient food systems. So, and as I noted, why are we having these discussions today? So this discussion is one, to help us reflect on the UN Food Systems Dialogues and the outcomes from there that we held last year. And from there, some of the strategic areas for focus in urban food system transformation were around driving equitable and inclusive processes, and particularly one of the ways to do this is through driving and promoting multi-level food system governance. And then driving national, regional, and local food system governance. Food and urban planning was also identified as some of the key areas. And then looking at emergency planning, response, and recovery. And given that particularly in the times that we're in, we've been responding to shocks and stresses over a given period of time. So then as our governance structure should be able to also put in place the processes to respond to emergencies, as well as health and resilient food environments. But I think also one thing that relates to some of the discussions that we had last year was issues around strengthening and supporting data collection and management, as well as dissemination, adopting accessible and inclusive finance systems. And I think this came out very strongly during the discussions in Nairobi and Kisumu, after noting that the food system is very much comprised of mostly informal actors as well as small-scale actors. So then we should be able to adopt more accessible and inclusive finance systems to support the growth of this. And of course, other areas that were identified were around leading climate action, reducing food loss and waste, integrating food into planning and urban design, and others. So, and that is why, as a follow-up to those discussions, and as a follow-up to some of the priorities identified, we thought that we'd start with a discussion around governance, around building systems for multi-level food system governance. And I think this is such a critical time in Kenya, given that we are going into election season, we are in campaign season, and therefore, what are those areas that we should hold our leaders accountable to, or that we should expect our leaders to be addressing around ensuring food security for all, but then also ensuring that the food system delivers one, equitable and decent livelihoods for all, drives environmental regeneration, but then also leads to economic development. So this dialogue is supported by FAO and Italy as well, and then we'll be able to conduct dialogues in 3 African countries as well as 3 Latin American countries. And ideally, the objectives of this is to, 1, promote the urban food systems lab in the selected countries, establish or consolidate the urban food system city networks in the 3 countries, and as well as bridge the national and local food policy and governance gaps, and support countries and cities to implement the national food system pathways. And as part of these engagements, we'll have city-to-city exchanges and twinning between cities. And as I noted, this will take place in Kenya, in Senegal, and in South Africa. And we hope that during certain parts of this conversation, we'll be able to facilitate city-to-city exchanges between the cities in the different countries. So what is the roadmap of action, or what is the roadmap of implementation of the Dialogues project? 1, we'll start with urban food systems labs, and this is what is currently taking place. And the idea is that to really bring into the room different stakeholders that are currently carrying out work from different levels of government, from national to local level, and then facilitating the city-to-city exchanges, and then identifying some of these priority areas and be able to feed this into COP27 as well as other platforms that will be taking place throughout the year. And then we want to keep this momentum going through a series of the food labs, city-to-city network platforms, cities with nature, among others. So today's program, we'll start with an introduction to what this whole engagement is about from FAO, and then we'll have an opening note from the Nairobi Country Secretary, and then we'll have a contextualization from Dr. Karugu, who is from Nairobi County, and then we'll have a contextualization of the Kisumu food system governance structure from Dr. Manga, and then we'll have a Q&A discussion happening before we can have breakout rooms. So please be ready to engage with us, but then to also have discussions between the different attendees here present, but then with also our presenters. Thank you for joining us. And at this particular moment, I would like to hand over to Mr. Tito from FAO. Over to you.
Thank you. Could you just give me a confirmation that you can hear me?
Yes, I can hear you and I can see you.
Yeah, thank you very much, and good to see you, Solfina. And good morning to everybody who's participating in this very important discussion. I'm actually here on behalf of the FAO representative in Kenya, Madam Carla Mukavi, who unfortunately was not able to be here because of some earlier engagements that are happening actually in Kisumu. So as I start, let me just say that FAO is very pleased to engage in this second phase of the Urban Food Systems Dialogue in partnership with ICLEI. You know that this year's engagement will, as we said, would build on the conversation started last year with a focus on strengthening food systems governance and the linkages between local and national level. FAO has been at the forefront of the Food Systems Summit in 2021, and we supported a number of food systems dialogues, you know, from the independent dialogues, the main dialogues that happened. We were really at the forefront of this, and in collaboration with 8 regional economic blocks. And then we had the 2 city independent dialogues that were held in Nairobi and Kisumu. And it is great to see this engagement. You know, it's beginning to extend to include other cities such as Mombasa and Nakuru. Now, under the FAO framework for the urban food agenda, we recognize the need for, a multi-sector, a multi-stakeholder partnerships to strengthen and transform our food systems, more so within the urban areas. The food system dialogues and exchanges create a forum for peer-to-peer learning on ongoing initiatives in cities and formulation of actions to address present food systems challenges. We just came out of an Afri-Cities Summit that was actually held in Kisumu County. And, we really had the opportunity to see, how rich exchanges can happen between cities and the kind of learning that could come from that. Our urban areas are growing at a very fast pace in Africa. Population growth and urbanization that we experience, and this is causing a number of challenges that also affect the food and nutrition security. We know that many of the urban areas are facing high unemployment rate, especially amongst the youth, climate change, skyrocketing food prices, food waste crisis that is affecting our environment, amongst others. Addressing these challenges requires the collaboration of all the stakeholders and proper coordination of national and local government policies, actions, and investments. And so, following the end of the UN Food System Summit, Kenya has really identified some critical pathways to advance food systems transformation. These are mainly, one, in promoting the access to productive resources for women and youth. Secondly, promoting the uptake of digital agricultural solutions. 3 is improving diversity of diets. And lastly, on heightening climate action to build resilience. FAO is leading the food coalition within Kenya and has signed up to address current, the government, Kenya government has signed up to address the food systems crisis in our food system. Now, due to the realization that urban areas are faced with different and unique food security challenges, FAO is also a key member of the Urban Food Systems Coalition, which was a major outcome of the Food System Summit. This is a coalition of stakeholders which aims at supporting countries and localities in promoting a sustainable urban food systems agenda. So basically, in conclusion, this task of transforming food systems requires concerted actions by many stakeholders and partners at the city, the local, the national levels to attain the 2030 agenda and achieve sustainable food systems. We need the intervention of national governments to ensure that they include urban food systems in their policies, programs, capacity development, and financial support. We need local stakeholders to organize and contribute to the national policies and the national food system frameworks. We need the local governments and urban administrations to integrate food systems issues into the urban and local planning. We need programs for access to nutritious diet, food environments, food waste. And there should be some interlinkages between the different departments, such as health and infrastructure, in addressing this in a more systemic way. So in short, addressing urban food system issues requires horizontal coordination across food systems components and across stakeholders, but also the vertical, global, national, and local. It is important that this voice of urban and local stakeholders is also heard in global and regional fora. So this engagement on the Food Systems Lab is a major step in bringing the transformation that will address our food systems challenges. On behalf of FAO, I thank the conveners ICLEI and wish you all a very productive engagement. I thank you. Thank you very much. Bye.
Thank you very much, Mr. Runga, for that opening. And Mr. Runga is the head of agribusiness from FAO and is representing the FAO representative in these discussions. And I think when you speak about some of the priority areas or the pathways that were identified, speaking about access to production materials, especially for youth and women, advancing climate action, improving improving access to finance. These are also areas that, that cannot be really addressed by just one level of government. And I think, as you noted, is that, is to really identify or what are those different levels of government that can work together to collectively implement the priority areas that were identified as part of the National Food System Pathways. So thank you very much for that. And maybe if there's access to a document that really outlines what are these priority areas, please do share it in the chat so that we can all be able to have access to this. And thank you very much for that opening. And so as we go on, and thank you all for joining us. And we do have Nairobi Country Secretary, Dr. Darius Musumba, who has joined us for the discussions. I'd like to please welcome you to give a welcoming note as part of the proceedings. Dr. Musumba, over to you. Sorry, Dr. Musumba, can you hear us? All right. I will, as you wait for Dr. Musumba to join us or to unmute, I'll be in contact with him. I'd like to invite.
Can you hear me now? Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you. Over to you.
Okay. Thank you. In a short while, I'm having technical challenges, but in a short while, I'll be with you here. Okay, thank you very much, everybody. Thank you and welcome. Ladies and gentlemen, Nairobi City County takes this opportunity to warmly welcome participants to this dialogue. A meeting like this one is expected to enrich our government with innovative ideas and enable us generate new actions and partnerships on delivering sufficient quantities of affordable and safe so I'll repeat that. A meeting like this one is expected to enrich our government with innovative ideas and enable us generate new actions and partnerships on delivering sufficient quantities of affordable and safe food for our city population. As the greatest single food market in the region, our city stands to gain immensely when our food system runs smoothly. We also could face serious difficulties in our food system is malfunctioning or disjointed. Nairobi City County held its independent food system dialogue last year in May 2021 as part of the United Nations Food System Summit process. The event took place when the city was engaging in public participation for our draft food system strategy. We were greatly honored to receive inputs which enriched our strategy. Specifically, we acquired and incorporated new ideas on sustainable refrigerated food transportation system, online marketing, sustainable food production and consumption, and the production and marketing of organic food. We are proud to announce that our food system strategy has since been completed and officially launched by Her Excellency the Governor. We expect to learn lessons in this meeting from other dialogue held nationally in Kenya and at the United Nations. This meeting should give us new ideas of how to fast-track implementation of a strategy so that the food security benefits of the strategy can be achieved faster. Ladies and gentlemen, allow me to conclude by my remarks by thanking ICLAI, Africa, and the Food and Agriculture Organization for continuing to partner with us, Nairobi City County, on food system and other public services. We are very happy with this partnership, and we urge you to continue even as we seek other partners to join us in this noble endeavor. We say thank you, which means asanteni sana. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Dr. Musumba, for that opening. And this takes me back to the dialogue at that time. I think when Nairobi was still trying to was getting input into the food system strategy. And I think what was quite strong about the platform then was that we did get input from different stakeholders that were coming from business, from academia, and from NGOs as well. And I think, as you noted, there were actions that were discussed then that you have incorporated into the strategy, or that have guided the strategy and the direction it has taken. And really, that brings me back to this platform: is that
That's correct.
And it's when it brings me back to this this platform is really how can we make such platforms more, how can we legitimize them as platforms that are incorporated into the governance structures, both at national level and at county level, platforms that invite different voices from different stakeholders to inform policy and then to also support with implementation. And I think during these discussions, I hope we can we are able to discuss some of these strategies so that as we are transitioning, or as we are in a state that helps us reflect on governance, and then we're able to promote or to provide strategies to our leaders that can strengthen governance. So thank you very much, Dr. Musumba, for that. All right, and so we've been speaking about this multi-level food system governance, and we almost assume that we know what it's about. We're talking about the vertical integration, the horizontal integration. What does this mean, and how would this be practical in the context of Kenya? So I'd like to invite Dr. Daniel to give us a background information on multi-level food system governance, and then I will invite Dr. Karugu from Nairobi County for a scene setting around what is currently happening in Nairobi, and then we'll also invite Dr. Paulo Manga from Kisumu to do the same. So thank you very much. Over to you, Daniel.
Thank you so much, Solofina. Can you see my screen?
Yes, I can.
Okay. Yes, thank you so much, Solo, and it's my pleasure to be here this morning. Good morning, everyone. Asante. And my task is simple today. It's to basically assist us in conceptualizing what we mean by multi-level food system governance, and why is it important, and why we should think in that way. So I'll start by basically talking about some characteristics of the food system, or of food security, or food even generally, before I go to why governance of it is important. I believe that is going to help us to contextualize this very well. Sorry, I'm trying to time myself. Great. I think we are familiar with this framework, and I think lately we talked about the food security dimensions and why it is not only important that we must emphasize availability. I think access is a major issue as far as food security is concerned. And very lately, we've seen now that 2 dimensions have also been added to the food security framework. That is the one that talks about agency. That is the power of people to act. How are we ensuring that we are activating that and giving people the choice to the choice of food they want, the power to decide for themselves, which is called agency, and also sustainability and stability also. We must ensure that food is not only available, it is accessible, but then it is, stability also, that it is available at all times and accessible at all times, meet all these dimensions at all times. Now, I want to share a little bit about the characteristics of food as we know. There is what the United Nations Declaration of Rights that a lot of nations in the world are signatories to, where they say they are going to ensure right to food to people. And why food is important is that food is seen as a public good. And what do we mean by public good? There are characteristics of public good that we can share around them. And we say, one, that it must be non-excludable and non-rivalrous. In other words, you should not exclude people from it. And that in a way also, there is nothing that you can compare to it, such as world peace. You cannot compare anything to world peace. There is no alternative to it. In a way also, there is no alternative to food, as it were. And we say the normative call of public goods, that in a way you ought not to be excluded from it. But then what we are seeing essentially is that some people are being excluded by being denied access to food. There are also some other characteristics, but because of time, I don't want to go into these. But what now is very visible and what is notable is that food now has become an impure good. And when we say something that is impure, it's something that possesses the characteristics of both a private and a public good. So it is a private good because it is produced, accessed, and consumed as a private good. You have to buy food, you have to have money mostly to buy food, except maybe there is an arrangement that you have where maybe it's being provided for you. Now, in terms of it's being public good also, like the benefit or externalities of producing, accessing, or consuming it, they are publicly enjoyed or endured. So essentially, when we say it is a public good, then we can see actually the fruit of it. If people have it, then they enjoy it. If people do not have it, then there are some externalities the society in terms of malnutrition, in terms of hunger, which leads to some certain also illnesses. And so it is an impure good, as it were. Food systems are as a complex system. And why is it a complex system? Is that it is embedded in some certain systems or intersect with some other certain systems. You can think about the water systems, think about ecological systems, transport systems, knowledge systems, even city as a system. So we say the food system is embedded within a city, which is also seen as a system. So that is why you say food system, it's very complex because of this embeddedness and its intersection with other systems. It's also result in cross-scale interactions between processes and actors. So a lot of people engage within the food system, whether in production, in consumption, and even the governance of the system. So actors at different levels, at different scales, in different arenas, we see this play out, which basically demonstrates the complexity of the food system. Now, another characteristic of food, and this one relates to food and nutrition security, is that food and nutrition security is seen as a wicked problem. It has the characteristics of a wicked problem in that it is, when we say features of a wicked problem, problems which are part of a network of problems. Sometimes you solve this problem, but then eventually they reappear, they reemerge and needing to be solved again. One thing I like in all of these characteristics is that time is running out to address this problem. So we always say time is of the essence. We must act now. But then we say it now, and then tomorrow we come again to say we must act now. That is the characteristic of a wicked problem, which is basically not going away. Or in another case, in another words, another thing is that those who are causing the problem are also seeking to provide the solution. Think about the corporate food system, where basically they demand a lot of the system. They control production in a way, and they have a control consumption, as it were. And they frame the problem of the system. They shape the food system in the way they act. We've got the corporate food system in every country and globally also. And finally, in terms of the wickedness of this problem, is that a central authority to resolve the problem is weak or non-existent. In other words, you can highly find in a country within a state what we call like a Ministry of Food Security, a Department of Food Security. Even when you create that and that department does not work with other actors, then it becomes problematic. In a way, it means that no one is in charge of the food system. These are some characteristics of the food system or of food and nutrition security that we need to pay attention to. And that is why governance of the food system is actually important. It is important because of the complexities that are inherent in the food system. And basically, if we want to achieve positive outcomes of the food system, it is not going to happen by merely adopting new technologies alone. It's not going to solve that problem. Positive outcomes will not happen by a top-down governmental approach. And it will only happen through several contributions and interventions from different actors, ranging from the government to the non-government and private sector. And that is why, so because of the complexity of the food system, governance of the food system is then very, very critical. So what then is food system governance? The definition by KenyaTurn says that it is not only about the rules, norms, and regulations and institutions that shape interactions, but also the actors involved and their actions, interests, and values. That is the definition of governance. In other words, it's not only about the rules, about the norms. We have to talk about the actions. We have to talk about the actors involved, their actions in shaping the rules, in shaping the regulation, and also their interests, their diverse interests within a governance system. And so a definition of food system governance is that rules, conditions, and processes through which interests and responsibilities within the food system are articulated. So there is a process whereby, or a mechanism in place in which people come together and diverse interests and responsibilities where these are articulated, where these are negotiated. That is what we call food system governance, in which case the actors' interests are articulated and decisions are taken to ensure food and nutrition security. And now going to multi-level governance. Why? What is the rationale actually for multi-level governance, which is basically the focus of this event? What we have identified is that individual government or department does not have all the power and resources that are required to adequately respond to a certain challenge, a public policy challenge. Now, in terms of food policy or food systems of ensuring food and nutrition security, national governments alone do not have the power and resources to deal with all the things that needed to be dealt with as far as the food system is concerned. So essentially, then this government needs to work with or seek the aid of other public actors, private actors, or non-government organizations. So essentially, one of the things also why multi-level governance is important is the fact that as people trade, as people migrate, so national governments are becoming too small to tackle large-scale externalities. Say, for instance, what is being done in Kenya in terms of maybe, for instance, pollution and things like that. In terms of the climate change effect of that is being felt maybe in Tanzania. So the large-scale externalities can not only be handled by Kenya alone. It calls for a supranational authority to be able to govern this and say, no, this is what we must do to ensure that these externalities are prevented. So they are becoming too small. National government are becoming too small in that case. In another angle or in another vein, national government then also, they are becoming too large to actually address on the ground needs of the communities. So we see that at the upper scale, national government does not necessarily have the power, the resources to manage the externalities of some of the actions taking place within a country. Or how do you respond to what is being done internationally or in Africa, which is having an effect on Kenya, if Kenya does not then relate with other countries or having a supranational entity relating with other countries? And in another vein, just like I've said, we are becoming too large to understand the on-the-ground needs of community. And that is why multi-level governance is very, very important. When we talk about multi-level food system governance, then it means the dispersion of authority upwards, downwards, and sideways between levels of government. And I'm going to actually look at also authority now. What do we mean by authority? But I want to focus on this definition of multi-level system governance. Dispersion of authority upwards, downwards, and sideways. Remember, like I've said, the national government does not have the power all the powers and all the wherewithal to be able to tackle food systems, as it were, because there are some issues that are happening on the ground, which basically the local government or the county government are feeling it, and the citizens there are actually communicating better to the county government. So we're talking about dispersion of authority upwards, downwards, sideways between levels of government, local, regional, national, and supranational. When we talk about authority, it means the competence to make binding decisions. So the essential factor when we talk about multi-level food system governance is that where does that authority lie to make this decision? And that is why it is always important. And this, the figure that I have on the right-hand side actually tells us about the different levels of government when we talk about multi-level governance. We've got the national government at the second point, but then it relates with a supranational or regional government. For instance, the African Union, for instance, the EAC, East African Community. And then below, downwards at the national is the subnational or regional provincial government. And then we have the local at the city level. Take, for instance, the Nairobi County. All of these need to relate together in terms of food policies, in terms of, and work in tandem to ensure that there is alignment and integration of food policies between this level. It is then that results can be achieved. So like I was telling about authority is located at different level, but then it must be located at a level that can most effectively respond to the citizens' interest. And so some of this authority will be located at the national level, some will be located at the county level. And in terms of locating this authority, there are two ways to go about it, especially when we talk about multi-level governance or multi-level food system governance. Number one is to either locate that authority for cross-scale coordination within a certain administrative arrangement. Take, for instance, like I've said before, having like a Ministry of Food Security or Agency for Food Security, which in a way sometimes is not visible because you have like Ministry of Food and Agriculture sometimes. Another way to go about it is then to define authority around a specific policy issue with overlapping membership from different governance levels. That's why you now have membership, maybe like a multi-level governance platform where you have membership from the private sector, from the non-governmental sector and different levels of government to decide on certain issues and to govern the food system. Allow me to just paint a picture. When we talk about also multi-level governance, I've talked about the horizontal, we can talk about the horizontal level of this, where national governments are actually coordinating within themselves, or county governments are coordinating within themselves to ensure, we can talk about vertical governance. I think I've alluded to that with the multi-level governance, but more horizontal governance is also important, multi-sectoral governance. And when you want to look at how some of these departments actually have a role to play in food system governance, you begin to look at their different responsibilities that attaches to food. Say in Kenya, you've got the National Treasury, which basically also is in charge of VAT levy, customs and excise. And we know of the Ministry of Agriculture in charge of food production. But then Ministry of Water and Sanitation, also water and sanitation plans, Ministry of Transport and Infrastructure, who basically determines the transport infrastructure and manage ports where basically you import and export food. So these different departments needs to work together. That's what we call horizontal governance, to say, okay, this is what we want to achieve as far as food system is concerned in Kenya, and work in tandem with each other. This one also paints a picture of how it relates to food security in a way within a county government. See the different departments that are involved in addressing food and nutrition security. Because at the local level, at the county government, they are the ones who determine planning laws, where you can build your house or change of use in a way, and they determine where markets are and where markets and the function of markets. So this different kind of government, the water, energy, we need electricity to cook our food, water. Without water, you cannot also even cook the food. So these are different and public health also, which relate to food safety. Different departments within a county government that interact in a way with food and nutrition security. And that is why this department must be involved in what we call horizontal or multi-sectoral governance of the food system, speaking to each other, engaging with each other, giving responsibilities to each other. And I think Solofina and different speakers have alluded to multi-stakeholder platforms and the importance of that, in that they facilitate food system governance because they collaboratively address the complex issues. And so in multi-stakeholder platforms, you have the CSOs, you have the government, you have private sector and community and groups. And we have different examples in Kenya. We have the flag, which is in Nairobi and Kenya, and also the Kisumu local interaction platform, where we can come together, government, private sector, community groups, CSOs, civil society, interacting on food and seeing how we can better govern the food system. So 3 themes are under multi-level governance, which must be emphasized before I round off. And that's number 1, that it is actually moving beyond formal institutions. We need to move beyond, okay, it is only this department that is responsible. We must encourage and involve all the stakeholders also, vertically and horizontally. And it takes a multi-scalar focus. When we say multi-scalar, multi-level, then you need to look at the different scales at the national level, at the county level, even supranationally. What are those policies that FAO is encouraging, and how does that affect, or how can that impact positively on Kenya's food system, and take that on board to county level? And it's also about developing a more networked approach where everything is interconnected. Because like I said, the complexity of the food system calls for collaboration, coordination. I've got an example here as I'm trying to wrap up of food safety policy coordination in Kenya. And on the left-hand side is the National Food and Nutrition Security Policy, which speaks to is a lot of things. But when I looked critically at it, it is not basically mentioning the role of the county government. And so, although there are some inspirations in the policy on how the city or on how the county government should act, but in terms of food safety policy, it's not actually speaking. So it has highlighted a lot of other actors or institutions in charge of food safety, but then it's not mentioning county government. It says national, and when you look at 3.14, it says National Food Safety Coordination Committee has been established as an interministerial body to increase awareness. This is good for horizontal governance. But what about the vertical coordination, coordinating with county government? This needs to be emphasized. And you could see also that Nairobi County actually have their own. And finally, this is the last slide. When we talk about the example of multi-level governance, I think Dr. Garugu will respond to how far this is being implemented. But I saw this in the policy, so I thought to share this. And so it says here in the Nairobi City County Food System Strategy that an intergovernmental relations committee on Nairobi City food system is hereby established. And it comprises representatives of Nairobi County government and those of national ministries, talking about the vertical coordination, trying to emphasize multi-level governance. Here, what probably is missing is what is the role of the civil society? How do they come in and things like that? Peradventure, yes, I think our colleagues from the county government can share experiences based on this, but I think I'll just I've emphasized about the merits of food system governance, multi-level food system governance. Why it is important is that it can serve as a descriptive tool and also like a solution-based model. So we have this problem. Let us better coordinate by ensuring a multi-level system governance. But we can also use it to analyze what are the issues, where are there gaps. I think that's the end of my presentation. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Dr. Denis, for that. I think it's in terms of helping us understand why this is important and what are some of the ways that we could go about it. And it's been quite comprehensive. And I think here, before I can even say anything, I would like to invite Dr. Karubu from Nairobi County. And then, so we will have a Q&A session or a discussion session around some of these issues that are being brought up, and really to also share some of the experiences that you are that you are going through around interacting with the different levels of government, or highlighting some of the work that you're doing around this whole multi-level food system governance, or even interacting with the governance systems around food in Kenya. So I'd like to invite Dr. Karubu, and I think Daniel already invited you from the presentation, to also to give us a bit of context or highlight what are some of the initiatives happening in Nairobi County, around this governance of food, but then also initiatives that have been put in place to strengthen and streamline issues around governance. Over to you, Dr. Karubu. Welcome, Dr. Polomanga.
Thank you very much. I'd like to share my screen. Just a minute. Nairobi have had two journeys, and they have now converged. The two journeys have converged into the strategy. So I walk us through how the two journeys came about and how they also converged. The first journey is urban area warning, area action journey. And as you may know, is that Nairobi, we had post-election violence in 2007, 2008. And one thing that happened is that all the supply systems of food were cut off, physically cut off. The roads were impassable and dangerous. So what happened is acute malnutrition was experienced in the city. And humanitarian organizations tried to come in, but the tools they were using, that is the global acute malnutrition rate and the severe acute malnutrition rate, could not trigger humanitarian response. The reason because is that these rates were not surpassed. The rates were not surpassed in terms of numbers, but the numbers, because of the high population of the city, were very high. For example, under the global acute malnutrition, we were leaving 60,000 children, 60,000 children who could not be assisted because the tool we are using was not sensitive enough to be able to identify that 60,000 children. So what happened is that a research was conducted immediately to identify urban sensitive indicators. So the research was called Indicator Development for Surveillance of Urban Emergencies. And you may find this in the internet, the whole process is there in the internet. And the findings of this research were actually piloted in Nairobi by a consortium of 4 agencies, Concern Worldwide, Kenya Red Cross, Oxfam, and World Vision. And soon after, in 2017, the Nairobi City County government adopted this tool and adopted the findings of this research, and actually started the implementation of a 1-year project to actually run the service. What this urban area warning area action means is that there is a stratified surveillance system, stratified and random in the main low-income settlements. Every 2 months, we go into the community and do a surveillance, against some indicators and against some targets that I'm going to share with you. And when these indicators are indicating emergency, then it triggers action to be able to address the emergency. So in brief, I will not go through all this. Since we are recording, we can share, but these are the indicators and these are the thresholds. What you realize is that urban food security is a factor of income. And many of these indicators are actually based on income, detecting the income variance and impact of on income. Then the response is a contingency plan at all levels. So when the indicators are saying we are normal, then is when you do a lot of stepping up your production, stockpiling for emergencies, and planning, and you work at peacetime. That is, you build your capacity at peacetime when you don't have problems. And when you have an emergency, then you trigger these, and then you give food relief, cash transfer, and other social protection. So that journey was recognized by the Milan Urban Food Policy Pact team in 2019 by being given an award, which was a special mention award on socio-economic equity. The other journey is the journey of a food system strategy, which started in 2017, and it started with a project supported by FAO, which was done in Nairobi, in Bangladesh, and in Peru, and it was acronymed NATHARI. And this is the one that planted the seed for food system planning. In a nutshell, the NATHARI project was a four-step chronological build-up, where you start with the analytical studies in your community, and you kind of find out you appraise your food system. You identify the components, you identify the localities, you identify the players, you identify the problems, and you get a lot of data from these analytical studies. And this data, you feed it into a tool, which is a rapid urban food system assessment tool, and you get results. And those results, you give you gaps. And through these gaps, you are going to now fill the gaps or address the gaps through a strategy or a plan. And in the process, we had a component of training government officials on food system planning. And alongside these project is a creation of a multi-stakeholder platform. I hope you can see it. And that platform is a multi-stakeholder platform that validates the findings of these projects at the level of analytical studies. The multi-stakeholder platform comes in and validates the findings. At the level of assessment and the results, they look at the result, they validate them. And at the level of planning, that the food system planning, again, the multi-stakeholder platform, you validate. So it was running alongside that. So a lot was achieved and some were not achieved. What was achieved was that an appraisal report was given highlighting everything about the Nairobi food system, and its components, in prayers, and its localities and services, and everything about the system, plus the gaps. And then an assessment tool was actually tested, and we have it, this tool. But most important is that we developed a critical team of officers who have now been converted into thinking in terms of a system approach. So we didn't go up to the level of the strategy at that level, but the strategy came later. What happened is that in 2018, two things happened. A directorate, which I am heading, was established. It's called Food System Directorate, and a technical committee was also formed by the government to draft the food system strategy. And this committee quickly came up with a first draft, and we put this draft through enrichment at very many levels. First of all, we met with all the other directors of other sectors that are not rated in agriculture, environment, health, finance, trade, and water, and others, and they enriched this first draft, and we came up with a second draft. Then we had a meeting with the departmental committee, these are Assembly, the county assembly, the legislative arm, plus experts. We met somewhere in a retreat for a whole week, and we enriched the draft. We got a third draft. Then we brought a consultant with kite support from FAO to assist in developing implementation plan, and implementation plan led us to have a fourth draft. And this is the fourth draft that we discussed through the last year's dialogue, and plus also a public participation within our country. And we finalized at that level by enriching the document. We tested the validity of the document by doing a cost-benefit analysis, which gave us a very strong positive, which made us know that we are on the right track. After that, the document went to official approval, and like County Secretary have already told you, in April, the document was finally approved by the government. So what is it having, this strategy for Nairobi? We have 84 projects and programs in all the components, filling all the gaps that were identified. These are projects, food production, distribution, processing. In all those components, there is a lot of activities which are concretized into 84 projects. Then several multi-stakeholder platforms were created by these documents. One is a joint committee with other counties. You remember we are more of an importing county. We produce a little, but most of the food comes from outside. So we have a committee, which is an intergovernmental committee at that level to harmonize on supply issues. There could be supply issues. Farmers need to be targeted, know what they are going to produce, how much, and who is going to buy, and all those issues will be addressed at that level. Then the one Daniel mentioned, intergovernmental committee, was also created. This is an intergovernmental, it's between governments, between Nairobi and the national government and all the other sectors. And the work is to harmonize on those concurrent jurisdictions. There's a lot of overlaps in many functions, in health, in water, even in food security, and then they will be harmonized at that level. Where national law need to be amended to accommodate what is in the strategy, there is a committee that is going to further to the national level for national legislation. Then a food board was established, which is a regulatory board, again on the concurrent issues of legal nature, like in terms of food waste. You know, there's a lot of players in food waste. When we want to recover it, health comes in, environment comes in, agriculture comes in. So all of them are harmonized in a food board. Then what Daniel asked is, what about the community and non-governmental organization? We have a flag. Flag is where everybody now comes in. These are all the stakeholders, private sector, government, non-NGOs, and community organizations. They are now members, they are eligible members of flag. And our flag is a think tank. It's a think tank which is supposed to meet and deal with innovative ideas, come up with innovative ideas and actions and partnerships. You know, think through the problems. Give us suggestions, concretize on those problems. And finally, a final one is a steering committee comprising directors of all the sectors that are related, agriculture, labs, environment, planning, everything. All those directors are steering, the steering committee for the strategy. So the next step is that it is very new. The strategy just passed in April, so we are just 1 month old. So we are now going into implementation, starting with the resource mobilization. Then we carry out the activities, and then we do monitoring, evaluation, and we keep learning. I thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Karugu, for that. And I would like to say that we did attend the launch of the flag committee, and seeing the number of stakeholders that were present, I think it really does show a commitment from the county to create a very diverse platform for input into decision making. And really, when we go into the discussion, I would like you to share for our attendees in the lab, what has been your experience in interacting with these different levels of governance that have been highlighted. If you're part of the flag committee in Kisumu, in Nairobi, how is the process working out so far, in terms of interacting with the government, in terms of being part of the decision-making process. We'd like to hear some of these reflections. And in a way, when we go through this process, we're able to identify where some of the gaps are, or where we can collectively work together to improve this. But thank you very much, Dr. Karugu, for sharing some of the structures Nairobi is putting in place, and also the efforts that the county is putting in place to ensure that governance is streamlined to include different stakeholders that contribute to the food system in Nairobi. So thank you very much for that. And so we do have Dr. Omanga from Kisumu, and Dr. Omanga will share also on the food system governance journey, so sort of trying to identify what other governance structures that have been put in place and what are the initiatives that the county is doing to ensure that governance is streamlined, but then also to ensure that issues around food security are addressed in the county. Over to you, Dr. Manga, and I'm sure you'll do the introduction of who you are. Thank you very much.
Thank you again. And I have to apologize because I had a problem in getting into the meeting. I used the link for the meeting that was on 24th, and I had to call somebody to get me through to today's meeting. Are you getting me?
Yes, I'm getting you. I'm sorry about that, but we're happy that you.
I apologize and thanks a lot. I'm late, and I had discussed with Eric to give a presentation for Kisumu, and I don't know whether it has been given or it has not. And I also must appreciate and must thank the work that has been done in Nairobi, our major city. And I think it is very clear that because of the problem of 2007, Nairobi moved ahead and has put in place some actions that have led them to where they are today. Kisumu was not left behind in all this also, but the approach the Nairobi took led them to somewhere faster than Kisumu. And I thank and I appreciate what they have done. Actually, when you talk of what we are discussing today, that is the food systems governance and planning and where we are with all these things, we have to look at the systems that we want to be in place. I think ideally, when we tackle the resilience and sustainable food systems, we are talking of nutrition, health, and safety-driven system. And here we are looking at the diversification of food systems. Then we are looking at productive and efficient efficiency, environmentally sustainable and climate and inclusiveness. And how we have moved into this, I think for us to start, like the Nairobi people have started, I think the most important thing was to come up with the flag, the food liaison adversary, the food liaison. Can we just go back a little bit? Yeah, the food liaison adversary group that we have formed in Kisumu, and this has assisted to bring in a multi-sectoral and a multi-stakeholders view into all this. So we are multi-sectoral in flag. We are multi-stakeholders, and I think this is going to help us a lot. After setting of the flag, I think with the support of FAO, Kisumu went further to engage a consultant or consultancy to look into issues of linkages and food flows within the city, to describe the food systems, i.e. the current situation, trends, and food supply, to find out the aggregation centers and how food is distributed, to find out processing, how food is being processed, and consumption, and all other things. And this would enable us the information we are going to get from this study will help us to develop policies and strategies that will assist us in the future. The county has also developed a number of food systems related policies and plans to guide the implementation. These include the County Integrated Development Plan and the Annual Development Plan, where we have tried very much to include food systems issues that happens within the city and in the periphery of the city. Kisumu County has also developed a solid waste management policy that is being used now. And in the waste management, we are also looking into how, one, to separate wastes into organic and other waste, so that the organic waste can go into manure or fertilizer production, then go back to production, to food production. The county is also, is in the process of some two strategies, especially the youth in agribusiness strategy, which is almost getting complete. And I think the stage at which it is now, we have given it to our cabinet. The cabinet has approved it, and it was awaiting going to the assembly, and the assembly, I think, is closing, so we might take it to assembly in September after the election, but it is somewhere that is very, very close to being passed. We have also developed the food systems strategy that is also be taken to cabinet and then to the assembly. And these are ready documents that are getting somewhere. Can we move next? Yeah, the county, you are getting me back to, yes, can you get me back to the policies and the national policies? Yes, actually these are just the national policies that we are working with, and we are trying to use this to develop our policies within the county, whatever is required there. Can we move to the next? We have had a number of efforts to improve food resilience in the county, and actually we have been building capacities of both our extension staff and the farmers. We have trained 18 extension staff have been trained on food systems approach. And a total of 39 TOTs have been trained, of which about 19 are males and 20 females on food safety. We were looking at, in food safety, we are mainly looking at aflatoxin and aflatoxin mainly. I don't know, there's something resistant management, but we are mainly looking at aflatoxin and other issues like the chemicals that might get into the food before it is used by our consumers. A total of 40 farmer business schools have been established. Actually, we have established and trained the farmers on the farmers business schools. And then we have trained about 51 community business coaches and extension officers that are now very close to the farmers, the urban farmers included here. And they have started now getting to the farmers in their groups and promoting the development. We are also looking at the youth. We have trained over 100 youths in agribusiness and entrepreneurship skills within the city and in the periphery of the city. And this is catching up. You find a number of youths are now getting interested in the agribusiness, especially the value addition and those small and large scale enterprises related to food systems in the city. And then when the COVID-19 came in, this was a big opportunity because it interfered with the business as usual in the cities. And it was also a big opportunity. Lessons learned have been used, and it has encouraged the agricultural people, especially in the cities, to engage in more local, within the cities, food production, because we realize that you can be closed due to war or anything, or a disease, and the movement in and outside the city would be a major problem. So this enabled us to start thinking intensively of within the city food production. And this is where we had been thinking of food diversification. And under food diversification, we have thought of very innovative ideas of bringing poultry farming and micro gardens for vegetables, fish farming into the cities, using innovative ideas like the micro gardens. All these things we have been doing, and they are getting picked up now with our communities, and especially those people living within the city. And we have had grants from FAO that has been supporting the population in the city to get into entrepreneurship and to get into businesses. And we appreciate a lot what has been happening. Next. Actually, the other areas, these are just pictures, what we have been doing, distributing one-day-old chicks. We have distributed quite a number of one-day-old chicks, I think over 10,000 to the people within the city. And this is creating some impact, because when we look at the poultry meat that is now getting into the town, is reduced. Most of it is now coming from within the city or within the periphery of the city. When we look at emerging opportunities, we see a very big opportunity in waste management. Can we move to the next? We are seeing an opportunity in waste management. As I have alluded earlier, waste management can be used effectively and profitably. And we are looking at the use of the waste into making fertilizer and manure. That is a very big opportunity from food waste from within the city. We're looking also at upscaling the Green Cities initiative, actually with the support of FAO and with the county government of Kisumu. We planted a total of about 1,500 tree seedlings, including the fruits and ornamentals in schools. Actually, we targeted about 10 schools within the city, and we were targeting 4K clubs, and about 192 pupils were trained to manage and maintain those trees and fruit seedlings. And we hope in future we are going to promote city-to-city exchange and the food lab systems. And I think that is where we have reached. And I have to say that we have some prioritized value chains. We are looking at dairy value chain. We are looking at poultry value chain. I've said that. We are looking at African leafy vegetables, the fish, and fruit trees. And I think we are really working within the city and in the periphery of the city to encourage our farmers to diversify agriculture, to have dairy, to have poultry, to have vegetables and fish, and even to plant fruit trees to complete the nutrition cycle. Yeah. Thank you for that. Can we move to the next? Yeah. We are meeting a number of challenges, and the challenges now that is coming include the high cost of agricultural inputs, especially fertilizer and feeds. And actually, in the high cost of inputs, agricultural inputs, the county government is trying to introduce an e-voucher system. This is a subsidy approach where the government will meet part of the cost of the inputs, and the producers also meet a part of the cost. We are looking at a situation where the producer meets about 60% of the cost of the inputs, and the government meets about 40%. And this will bring in the ownership of the inputs to the farmers or to the producers. We have had challenges with the recurrent floods, actually, around the city that has affected our food production. And this is all because of the climate change. And we are trying to come up with some climate smart agricultural innovative practices, like the micro gardens, that even when the floods come, the plants will be in a higher use of the gunny bags. You will find the plants will be higher and they will not be affected much by the floods. Urbanization and population growth in Kisumu actually is leading to declining agricultural land. And actually, you find the city is now extending outside to where people used to grow crops, and those land is now becoming, most people are putting housing and the rest and forgetting agriculture. And I think Kisumu has developed a plan, almost a 50 or 100 years plan, that has earmarked some areas which would be for agriculture production in the future. And that plan, once it is implemented, will earmark some land that has to be left for farming. We have had challenges with poor market linkages. Actually, market linkages is a big issue. How food produce get into the city. There are cartels that make the profit by the city dwellers or the people who are engaged in urban food systems make very little profit. So this we are going to tackle this by bringing in legislations within the city to control that. And can we move to the next? Can you move to the next? Yes. I've talked of emerging opportunities. I think I've talked of this, and as we stand now, we are developing a number of policies and strategies to take care of this. I think I've talked about that earlier. Then can we move to the next? Hello, can we move to the next? Yeah, I think, thank you. That is what I could say now. And thank you very much.
No, thank you very much, Dr. Mbanga, for sharing on some of the initiatives that are currently happening in Kisumu. And I think you highlighted something that was also echoed in the last dialogue was, Kisumu is not primarily a producer of food. So that means it's depending a lot on food that's being imported out of the county. But when you're discussing today, you're bringing up, some of the initiatives around ensuring that, in 50 to 100 years, there should be plans in place to ensure that the city is sufficient in its production of food. But I think also some of the key things that you mentioned, or that can be potential opportunities here, is ensuring that the food that is produced, how is it linking to the markets within Kisumu and out of Kisumu? Are there processing opportunities for this food? Are there opportunities for ensuring that consumers can access this food at an accessible price? And then also looking at waste management. And what was quite impressive, during some work and visit Kisumu was, the initiatives that are currently happening between local government, civil society, academia around waste management. So I think these are wins that we can build on. So thank you very much, Dr. Manga, and I'd like to also thank Dr. Karugu from Nairobi. And you mentioned city-to-city exchange. I'm wondering if there's an opportunity here to continue these discussions post this lab, around how Kisumu and Nairobi can start collaborating and sharing around how best to improve their food system.
I think that is quite important.
Dr. Karugu, did you hear that?
In fact, there is a good news. University of Nairobi have a project which is Nairobi, Kisumu, and Nakuru on one platform.
Okay.
Yes. The project is almost starting. The documents have been signed. So we will be having many more meetings between the three cities.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. No, absolutely. I think that's the way to go. Moving from here. Okay. So we've been hearing from presenters, but now would like to engage, with what has been presented upon. Right from some of the programs or the National Food System Pathway priorities, right into what a multi-level food system governance could mean, understanding what are some of the initiatives that are happening in Nairobi and Kisumu. And I know on this platform we do have members from the flag committees in both Kisumu and Nairobi. We do have members from agribusiness. We do have members from research institutions. So I would like to invite you to please make comments, ask questions to our speakers for today, but then to also reflect on some of the work that you are doing within Nairobi, within Kisumu, or within Kenya generally, that is speaking towards this whole aspect of strengthening governance or improving resilience and food security. And, if possible, please do switch on your video, or do raise your hand, or include a question in the chat function that we can engage on. And this is before we can do the breakout rooms that have more focused discussions on three key questions. Mr. Samba Nixon from the Kisumu flag, maybe I should invite you to give an opening comment on this. In terms of how has the flag been functioning so far, and then in terms of having the mandate to advise the local government, how is that going, and has it been very effective in advancing or improving inclusivity of decision making at the county? Mr. Samba, are you with us?
This production.
He's joining shortly.
Okay.
Processing
All right.
and consumption.
He's switching on his output.
I know he's asking a technical
All
question.
right. Thank you very much.
Hello.
Yes, Mr. Samba, welcome.
Hello, Solofina. How are you? It's good to see you again.
No, it's good to see you again. How are you doing?
Niko salama sana. How is Ese?
We are doing great. It's just getting
Yes.
into the winter now, but all good. Yes.
Oh, thank you very much. Now, ladies and gentlemen, and the team that is following this conversation, may I offer you greetings from the city of Kisumu, which is one of the fastest growing intermediary cities in Africa. I want to give my remarks in my capacity as the co-chair of the Food Liaison Advisory Group in Kisumu, in a project supported by FAO to strengthen the urban food systems. I would want to acknowledge the statements that have been given by speakers that have spoken before. And I want to reinforce and reiterate that the experience that Kisumu has had has been very interesting and very productive, in that the community is working very closely with the government in implementing and strengthening the food systems. We have been very lucky in Kisumu that the county government has been one of our biggest supporters in supporting initiatives of communities towards strengthening urban food systems. And it's now becoming a collective responsibility that the community has taken ownership of the process. And moving forward through the support of FAO, we are working on a sustainability strategy so that when most of our funding systems run dry, then we will be able to have an institution that is able to run on its own and continue with the agenda. Because the discussions around food and food systems is a continuous discussion that will not end in our lifetime. It will never end. We will do our part, pass over the conversation to the next generation that will come after us and the generations that will come after them. So, ladies and gentlemen, I want to express my gratitude for holding such forums, which provides a very rich forum for exchanging and sharing our lived experiences and generally strengthening the conversation around food systems. And Solofina, thank you very much for bringing us together, and everyone else from the entire globe for this conversation. I look forward to physically hosting some of you in the city of Kisumu. We have proven our worth. We just hosted the Free Cities the other day, which was a great exposure for the African continent, that intermediary cities like the city of Kisumu are the next big thing. Because we have now a chance to plan our cities well and make sure that our cities are able to feed our people properly. Intermediary cities are now giving us that chance, that Africa now needs to plan their cities properly. And what most on the top of the list is to bring in the conversation around food systems and climate change mitigation. And we have a chance to prove that with the intermediary cities in Africa. So I want to thank all of us. And as this conversation continues, let us raise our issues without any fear or contradiction. And let us talk on behalf of Africa and for Africa. And let us move forward. Thank you very much, Solofina.
Thank you very much, Mr. Samba, for that. And I would like to congratulate Kisumu for hosting the Afri-City Summit. It was very successful, and some of the deliberations that came out of there will really guide the direction of growth of different cities. So, Mr. Cheng, I've noted your hand is up. We have a question from Mr. Dari in the chat. If you'd like to, please switch on your mic and address your question. And it could be directed to, for example, either our county leaders or to other professionals in the room. Would you like to switch on your microphone and put your question forward, Mr. Dari? So you did raise a question around urban garden soils often contain elevated levels of lead, mainly from legacy soils. What are we doing to limit exposure and health risk? And I've noted that, you know, in the plans for the two counties, there's ambition to increase urban food production, but this is also an ongoing issue that has been identified in the cities. So do we have plans in place to address these issues? Maybe Dr. Manga or Dr. Karugu or other professionals in the room. Are there initiatives that you're currently doing or planning to do to address this issue of urban soil contamination?
If I could talk on behalf of Nairobi, is that yes, we are sensitive to the food safety issues of urban agriculture. Pollution from vehicle exhaust, from other industries, and this strategy we have put in place. We have a component on health, and a lot of research is going to be done on this area to confirm the safety of urban agriculture and the safety of the produce. So we are sensitive to that observation. And along the way, it's going to be addressed through research, and any change that is necessary will be made from evidence. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that. Dr. Manga, would you like to respond to this?
Yes.
Okay.
Actually, there is a big concern about soil contamination, especially for food or vegetables grown along the rivers where there is affluent emissions. And this is giving us a big issue. And there are some rivers with the chemicals from factories or industrial areas that is also giving us a lot of problem issues. And also the air contamination, all this exhaustion from the vehicles, everything gets into the air and then back to the soil. Actually, we are sensitizing the communities, the people about that. And coming up with the legislation is one area that will limit that. Also, the use of these modern technologies, like what we have been saying, micro gardens, use of gunny bags. We are ensuring that the soil that is brought for the plants is soil which is not contaminated or something like that. I think we are taking that angle to it to reduce exposure to toxic chemicals that could be in the soil here. Thank you.
No, thank you very much, Dr. Manga, for that. And Ms. Ocheng, over to you. Please switch on your microphone, and if you could switch on your video as well, please go ahead.
Thank you, Solofina, and everyone else. Glad to meet you again for those who met before during the flag meeting. I just wanted to make, I'm Vera Ocheng Sharon from Kenya National Farmers Federation, a member of the Nairobi flag. And I just wanted to make a few comments. First of all, the beautiful presentations on the pathways and how we can address the issue of urban food. First of all, I wanted to make comments on what the organization is doing currently that touches on some of the pathways that Mr. Tito Arunga mentioned, the previously identified pathways. When it comes to heightening climate action, for example, to build resilience, we do have projects and programs that enable farmers, first of all, to capacity build them, to be able to take part in a farmer-driven climate action. That includes planting trees, for example, implementing silvopastoral systems, and just knowing and being aware and practice the climate action resilience and adaptation strategies. I say with a bias to farmers, since we are a national farmers federation, and our initiatives majorly revolve around the farmers. Anish also wanted to speak about that the person from Egerton University has highlighted is that there is a need to give some intensive focus to the production end of the food system from farm, especially issues to do with soil health that from our farmers has been a great concern. The issues to do with food safety, the use of fertilizer, overuse of fertilizer, for example, that has affected soil health. So we need to give those kinds of strategies on how that can be dealt with, so that we also think about safety, for example. And since soil health also affects production from the beginning of the end, that also needs to be given quite some focus. Secondly is when you speak about urban food systems, there is also need to intensify the sensitization of urban dwellers on urban agriculture. Speaking about peri-urban agriculture, I think from Kisumu, they highlighted what they're doing, for example, which is quite commendable. So my thinking is that we also need to think about incentivizing, especially the dwellers in the slums, for example, who are highly susceptible to hunger and malnutrition, especially in Kenya, now that foodable affordability and the cost of living has gone quite high. So as much as we have these strategies of how to deal with this, we also need to think through how to incentivize, especially these dwellers who are more susceptible to hunger, malnutrition. And in short, those who are likely to be more affected with this. And also just talk about, I already talked about soil health, and also just farmers. Cities most of the time rely on food from other counties, for example. And we also need to have that inter-county coordination, for example, that as we think of urban agriculture to boost access and availability of food, we also see how to have a coordinated approach between nearby the counties nearby the cities, so that we are able to gauge production, for example, to see sustainability. What projections can we have? What is lacking? What can this county produce? What can it bring? What shortages does it have, even as Nairobi depends on the metropolitan, for example, to be able to give supply, for example. Yeah, those are some of the issues I also wanted to highlight. And lastly, as we think about incentives, one of the pathways that Tito did mention was digitalization, for example. We also need to think about incentives. When we think about the youth and the women, how do we incentivize them to be able to adopt these opportunities for the youth, for example, into the whole food system from farm to fork? How do we bring them in, and how will they make them have that access to finance in a sustainable way, so that as smallholder, for example, is able to sustainably and adopt that digital software, for example, or just any digital strategy that they can use in their farms. That's it for now. Thank you.
No, thank you very much, Vera, for that. And I do remember vividly one of the conversations that did come up last year was around, in terms of policies, it looks like national and county are winning in creating strong policies. But then when it comes to realistic implementation of these policies at different levels, I think that is where we see a bit of a gap, seeing that, we want technology to be streamlined, but then realistically implementing these at different levels in different communities. How is this being done? So I think that is also one of the things in terms of discussing strategies. How can we implement strategies that are coined at national and county level? How can we practically implement these at the different levels? Right from our informal actors, right from our small scale actors in cities, among others. How can we ensure that these policies are not benefiting those that are already benefiting from them, all these processes, but then really benefiting the different levels of the communities, urban communities. So thank you very much. And we've kicked off the discussions already. And so what we'd like to do now is to just go into smaller discussion groups. And what we aim to get to do with this is that to really be more practical, getting from some of our experiences working in the cities, our experiences working with governance structures, how we can streamline a food system, multi-level food system governance. So we would like the different discussion rooms to have government officials, but then also non-government actors there. So what I would like to request is that if you're joining us from county government, from national government, please edit your name to add a G to it, so that we can identify you as from governance, and then we'll be able to distribute into 3 different breakout rooms to facilitate smaller group discussions around this whole issue of multi-level food system governance. And how can we do that is that when you click on participants and you see your name, on the left, there'll be a tab saying more, on the right, and then rename. So under rename, please add a G to your name, and then we'll be able to redistribute, to ensure that each room has some actors from government, but then also from non-government. Thank you, Daniel. And I'd like to thank all of you for the participation in the breakout rooms. Was there someone, maybe 1 or 2, that was still airing their thoughts and would like to finish that before we go into the reporting back to plenary?
Maybe I just wanted to mention, it seems we have a lot going on with different stakeholders. And I think you had a question on that we've not discussed. What platforms exist, and if they don't, that we need to share information on who is doing what, how can we improve what's being done, what are the gaps, things like that.
No, thank you very much for that question, Dr. Catherine. And that's also one question that came up during some of the interactions we did have in Kisumu, is that it's not that there's lack of initiatives and actions happening, but then what is the common place that can bring all this together? Are there platforms already in place that we could sort of hinge on to better understand what is happening, or what initiatives are being done by government, to sort of create more inclusive ways of decision making. So I think that's today, at least we've learned of 2, the flag committees in Nairobi and Kisumu, but then what other platforms exist to support or to bring to the table the different initiatives that are happening in the different counties. Sami, over to you.
Thank you. I just wanted to request if you can also share the materials that have been presented and the links that have been shared, so that we can pick up the dialogue further.
Absolutely. So what we'll do is that we'll pick these out, and then maybe when sending some follow-up communications about the meeting, then we'll share these as well.
Okay, this will be very important, so that we are able to incorporate all the resolutions that are being made and the proposals that are being made for Nairobi City.
Absolutely. And And Dr. Catherine, yes, we want to hold this thought as we think about some of the concluding remarks for this discussion. Ivan?
Yeah, I just wanted to quickly comment on the dissemination of all the information that emerged through this. We will compile a post-food systems lab report and share with everybody. But this whole session has also been recorded and will be uploaded onto YouTube or onto our website, ICLEI Africa's website, and we'll share the link with all of the participants and everyone in our food systems mailing list afterwards. So you'll have the opportunity to rewatch it as many times as you want.
No, thank you very much, Ivan. And there's a comment in the chat around, before we start new platforms and mechanisms that risk to duplicate, we definitely need to start from what exists. So I think as one of the key actions really moving forward is just stepping back and understanding, what platforms do we have already, either at national level, at county level, or even more local level at community level, that are trying to bring together different actors or different levels of governance, but then also how can this now start complementing each other in terms of action and implementation of policy. And I think really that the aim is to support implementation, but then to also support planning. All right, and to me, this is also one key takeaway that we can sort of move forward with from this discussion is that, yes, there's lots of initiatives happening, but then what brings them all together, or what are the platforms that have been created so far that can collate, that can be vehicles for moving forward actions that are already taking place on the ground. So I would like to, for our colleagues reporting back to plenary, please do your groups justice. And I think also reflecting on the fact that that this discussion is around how we can streamline multi-level food systems governance. And so it's going to be very brief in terms, so we do have 2 minutes from each group. We did have 3 discussion sessions, but then also maybe after a presenter has put forward some of the issues that were discussed, and there's a member that wants to supplement, please also do feel free to go ahead with that. So we'll start with the group 1.
Yes, thank you very much, Solofina. Yeah, we had quite a rich conversation. I'm going to try and touch as many points as I can in the 2 minutes, but please forgive me if there are some things that I missed. So initially, we didn't even get to finish the 3rd question because I think the conversation was really picking up momentum. So first, when touching on the Nairobi food system strategy, something that was noted was the importance of the multiple stakeholders that were involved in the process of drafting and planning at the different MOUs that were signed and things like that, that really strengthened the reach and the overall kind of perception of the policy, which I think was quite relevant to the conversation on multi-level governance. And then also talking to the different peer-to-peer learning platforms that have been established for counties of Kisumu and Nakuru to learn from the progress that has been made in terms of food systems governance in Nairobi, and how important the idea of context it is when trying to advance multi-stakeholder platforms such as this, is to always keep in the back of the mind context and how important it is to integrate that into the planning. And then a major thing that came up, I think, from our conversation is, and it's an issue across the world, I think, and especially on the African continent, is the problem in the Kenyan context is not necessarily a lack of policies and well-crafted policies, but largely the lack of efficient implementation. So we were lucky enough to have quite a few representatives from government in our breakout room. And then the question was posed, but what can government do to ensure that policies don't just end up dusting away on a shelf or inside a drawer on a cupboard somewhere, but how can we ensure that, for instance, the Nairobi food system strategy gets implemented? And I think what came out of that conversation is that the most important consideration is to communicate the policy with ordinary citizens to ensure that it's accessible and relatable to the citizens that are supposed to be the beneficiary of this policy, but that it's also easily understandable in the sense of exploring and thinking of ways that we can draft and communicate policies in a way that it's very easy for stakeholders across the entire food system to understand how exactly they will be involved in the process of implementation. And also something that came out is to communicate what the role of the beneficiary will be in the implementation of the policy. So I think that was quite interesting, and it gives a lot of food for thought for when we start the implementation phase of policies. And then, okay, sorry, I'm just going down through our notes. Yeah, and I think that captures the major points that were made. Also talking on the issue of how can we ensure that there's more effective collaboration between national government and county governments is also to really try and involve institutions such as the Council of Governors in conversations like this, and to continue the momentum that's built after engagements such as this and other multi-stakeholder platforms such as the flags really lead to actionable steps. And yeah, I actually wish we had more time in the breakout rooms to explore these ideas and develop our own ideas further, but unfortunately that's all we had. I'm sure I'm missing some points, but feel free to add in the chat, participants of our breakout room, please. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Ivan. Anyone from Group 1 who would like to add one or two points to this?
Yeah, just a lesson that I've learned that during this communication, we needed to come up with an abridged version of the strategy and in languages that members of the community can read for themselves. That's a lesson I learned. We do an abridged version, a simplified version in a language, maybe Kiswahili, where everybody can read.
No, thank you, Dr. Karugu, for that. Ivan?
Just a quick response to that. I think, yeah, the language element is incredibly important. But in Solofina's presentation, there was an infographic that summarized some of the key outcomes of the Food System Summit dialogues of last year, which captures like 10 actionable points and 5 strategies in a very infographic, beautifully presented way. And I think that also presents quite a great opportunity of communicating the core elements of a policy or a strategy with citizens in general. Yeah, that's it. Thanks.
No, thank you very much for that. Over to you, Daniel.
Yeah, thank you. In our group, we reflected on the 3 questions. And the first questions, which basically about the approaches, opportunities, and barriers of the current multi-level food system governance framework or process in Kenya. Some gaps were identified by participants or discussants in the group. It said that that there is need for a multi-stakeholder approach to in terms of decision about market location and things like that. That's presently there is planners approve markets. They decide where markets are located without communicating and engaging with other departments such as public health, food, and also the private sector. So there must be an enhanced coordination on that. And also what came out strongly was the fact that there are some existing strategies that are already there that that are good. And when you look at the Nairobi County strategy, there are some laudable highlights there in that strategy, but so the issue is about fast tracking the implementation of that. And so effort must be geared towards actually doing that. And so that, because it also takes inspiration from some overarching strategies, development strategies, such as SDGs, Vision 2030. And so we must fast track that and see to what extent we are able to do to implement these, and eventually then we will now be in a process to say we want to evaluate what we have achieved. In terms of the second question, where we're talking about effective partnership between for national food system pathways, and we reflected around the platforms that are there, and there is a chart also. There is someone posted in the chat box, one of I think it's Vera who posted and reflected around some existing committees that we already have, where we can leverage multi-level food system governance. And she mentioned JASCON, and so we can use that to mainstream. She also alluded to the Council of Governors, where it's like it's a platform of convening where basically all the counties, all the counties of the governors, the county governors meet, and then that kind of platform, they could use that to foster food system governance amongst the within these counties, and discuss around these issues that bind them together, and look at resolutions to drive food system positive food system outcomes. And in terms of the third question, where we talk about the strategies, platforms, or initiatives, what came out strongly was that just like at the national level, just like some things are being given priority, for instance, poverty, health, education, that it is high time we started prioritizing also food system or food and nutrition security, which is actually an outcome of the food system. And so there is also the comment that food system should be able to stand out in the integrated development plan of county governments. Food system issues, especially food and nutrition security, they should be able to stand out. We have a lot of things that stand out. Planning is always highlighted. Health is always highlighted. Women and youth, they are always highlighted. So in the integrated development plans of county government, we must highlight and emphasize food system. I think I'll stop there.
Thank you very much, Daniel. One or two comments from your group? All right. So and interesting you make that comment, when we read the president's big four priorities, of which food security is part of them. And I think that helps. Then we should reflect and ask our questions then. If it is a priority, then is it that we have not identified, the right priorities under there, or the right strategies to attain this, or it's not necessarily a priority but highlighted as one? So I think these are some of the issues that we should keep asking ourselves also when we're thinking about the integrated development plan. If food security has been identified as a priority by the president plan, then why isn't it filtering down to integrated development plan and other different policies? Okay, so from the discussions we had in group 3, I think and Dr. Catherine did bring up some of these issues that, one, there are initiatives already happening, especially by research institutions, and we did have a representative from Maseno University, from University of Nairobi. There's research happening for different levels of the food system, but I think where the gap has been identified is the streamlining, or the being able to incorporate structures where we're able to incorporate research into policy, or to inform research and policy, and how this can be made smoother, or how there should be structures in place at county level or at national level to be able to readily absorb research that's being produced, and be able to manifest this into decision making. Then I think one thing that closely relates to that is that was brought up was the issues around private-public partnerships. And I think this comes from the notion is that private sector is moving a lot of work or a lot of initiatives along the food system. And this is right from production to processing to consumption. So then, you know, why isn't the government strengthening this relationship, strengthening this collaboration between private sector to be able to bring about transformation, but then to also be able to benefit from the skills of the private sector or from the implementation potential private sector to bring about transformation. And maybe these are already happening, but then why aren't we seeing these types of models being more successful or being scaled up to allow for more effective implementation of our policies, but then also of some of our overarching objectives at national and county level. Then just one other point that did come up. I think it was raised around contamination of mycotoxins of the soils in urban areas. I think this has been identified as a key issue, and you know, and I think the comment here was that there are resources available from the private sector to be able to support county government with identifying, for example, what areas are safe for crop growing or not, and also how this can be addressed. So I think there is need to really strengthen this type of collaboration between research within private sector and within also institutions. And I think another one, which is another strong point that came up, was around you know, to be able, their ongoing partnerships, especially with national government, around strengthening supply chains. But then really looking beyond these supply chains and looking into the systems around that. And these are systems related to transportation, to storage, to aggregation, among others. So, and we saw, especially during the COVID-19 pandemic and lockdown regulations, that what was really affected were the supply chains of food, seeing that most of our cities are primary consumers, but not producers of food. So, but then also when we think about supply chains, we're thinking about the linkages between different counties, between the county and its hinterland. So then in terms of that physical, but then also governance linkages, how are we working on this to be able to ensure that the movement of food happens in an effective way, in a safe way as well. So those were the 4 key issues that were brought up, and I thought these were very cross-cutting in that they did address issues around what strategies or what are areas that are key in terms of for streamlining coordination of governance levels. So, any other addition from someone who was in group 3? All right. I'm not seeing any other hand coming up, but I think to me, one of the key issues that is coming out of this discussion is one, understanding, and I think we've started the process from the counties, and it would be great to also do it at national level. One, understanding what platforms are already in place in terms of supporting the exchange, the partnerships between these different levels of stakeholders, different levels of governance, but then also starting to create or strengthening the partnerships, or starting to strengthen ways of collaboration, and particularly around resource mobilization, around tapping into the skills that different stakeholders have to offer. So before I hand over to a colleague from FAO to really offer some closing reflections, and then I'll come back to offer a way forward. Please do type in the chat in terms of what are some of the clear way forward that we want to see from the discussions that we've had today, as we plan for the second lab that will happen in October, to also bring these issues that we've discussed today to the incoming leadership, but then to also offer as a reminder to the technical and political officials that have been here today in terms of what are some of the priorities we discussed around transformation of the food system. So please do use the chat function, and then allow me to hand over to our colleague from FAO to close, and then I'll also offer a way forward after this. Maybe Rebecca, over to you. So Rebecca, are you with us? All right. She will be able to join us. I think once she's back online. But so this lab has been designed as the first in a series of 2 labs, and we conceptualize this as a technical forum. And the idea is to identify what are those key strategic areas that can be tapped into, especially for streamlining issues around multi-level food system governance. And once we've been able to identify some of these, is to compile this into a documentary report that we can share with national government, that we can share with county level government, and then follow this through in the second phase to have a very high political discussion around some of the strategies that have been identified. And this will take place in October towards as we are welcoming new officials, or even welcoming back the old officials. So I would like to invite Rebecca to also do from FAO to do a closing, and then we can officially close the event. But thank you very much for joining us and for joining the discussion. And we'll keep in touch in terms of some of the outcomes that have come out of this. And then also I will iterate the way forward. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Salofina. Can you hear me? Hello?
Yes, can hear you, Rebecca.
Yes, Rebecca, we can hear you.
Yes, so I think I've just switched off my video because my connection is very shaky. But I'd like to thank ICLAI for convening this forum, the Fast Food System Lab. It has come at a point where I think we have gained a lot of momentum in terms of looking at what are the current food system challenges, especially in urban areas. And I think as per the discussion, it's clear we are having challenges in our urban areas. There is the issue that has been raised of urban agriculture and food safety. We have the food waste challenge. We have growing populations, plus many other challenges. But I think beyond these challenges, we have also heard that there are some interesting innovations, and there are some things that are going on in the cities that are transforming how we look at food and how we manage our food system. So I think this is a very appropriate forum for us to look at our food system. And it's also very interesting that we are getting an opportunity to have a kind of peer-to-peer exchange and learning, so that what is happening in Nairobi, we can see a lot of things happening in Nairobi. They are making progress in terms of how they manage their food system, with their food strategy, the Food Liaison Advisory Group, plus many other initiatives, including monitoring food security situation. So it's an opportunity for us to exchange as cities, engage with cities that have come up like Nakuru, because I think it is critical that as we think of growing urban areas, intermediary cities, that they don't make the same mistakes or don't go through the same challenges that bigger cities have gone through in terms of urban food systems. So I'd like to thank all the participants who are here. I think we can tap onto each other's strengths. We have researchers who can help us to answer the questions such as the contamination of our soils and water in the urban areas. We have people who can help us to look at how do we promote the private public sector engagement, as was raised, especially in our distribution chains, in our wholesale markets. So we have a lot of wealth of information and knowledge within ourselves, and it will be critical that as we move forward, we are able to promote this kind of engagement, both with national and county governments, but also within the stakeholder forums for the private sector and the public sector. So I thank you, and I look forward to us engaging in the next dialogue, in the next lab, which will be probably, as you said, in October. And maybe to reiterate that it is something that we will continue to partner with the stakeholders here, because it is anchored under our urban food agenda framework, to continue collaborating and working with our stakeholders to ensure we have a sustainable food systems. So thank you so much, and over to you, Solofina.
Thank you very much, Winnie. Dr. Karugu, I can see you put a comment for us in the chat. Do you want to maybe elaborate on that briefly as we close in?
Yeah, we have a golden opportunity on because we are still not yet to elect our president. And you posed a challenge about outgoing president had food security as one of his what we call agenda 4 item. And it didn't have traction. So I'm just posing an idea to us, and maybe because we are many in this forum and some are politically connected, or some of the organization have political power, give us a way out where we can meet with some of these think tanks for our candidates, for candidate number 1, candidate number 2, the so-called horses. There are 2 horses. Then we meet with them and let this one be a campaign issue. Securing food security for Kenya become a campaign issue, and we elect the one with the best strategy. So I'm asking, maybe how do we reach to them? I don't know how to, I don't know where they meet, don't know where their offices are, don't know, maybe, but some of us in this meeting, maybe they are political power, they can help us. That was the issue I was raising.
No, thank you very much, Dr. Karugu, for raising that. And I think it is a good closing to our discussion, is really how can we strengthen, or how can we increase the number of ears, but not only ears, but then also people with implementation power around the issues of food security. And to us, that is our mission, and that is what we want to keep doing, ensuring that our cities are food secure, but then also driving the political will for both governance, but then also private actors, civil society, and government organizations, and the private sector, so that we can collectively ensure food security for our ever-growing urban areas. So thank you very much, and you'll hear from us in terms of the outcomes from the discussions we had today, and we'll keep in touch. We'll also communicate with you when the second food lab will be, and then who will also be part of these discussions. There'll be very much political discussions, getting our decision makers in the room to also deliberate about what we brought up today. So thank you very much, and I would like to wish all of you a peaceful election season.